All right, welcome back. We're here at Gilda's. I already had my tortellini. I don't know about you guys, and it was amazing. I get it every time. But as you guys know, I went to Westview High School, so this makes me very happy. Brings warm fuzzies in my heart to have head coach of the boys basketball team, Pat Coons, here with us. Hey, Pat.
Great to be with you guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
You
I know
bet.
the trek was far from Beaverton, so how's your season going so far? I know that we're about halfway, I guess you can kind of say. Been through the Les Schwab tournament, been through a couple tough off-season or out-of-league games. But how's it going so far?
I would say pretty well. You want to be peaking at the end of the season and playing well through the good heart of the season. But right now we feel like we're going through a little bit of sickness throughout the team, and it's not just one or two kids. I think a lot of teams go through that. So we're getting hit with that right now. One of our starting point guard was out today. We're getting ready for a Jesuit game tomorrow at home, so that's always a big one for us. And just hopefully be healthy. But Les Schwab was a great experience for us, pointed out some weaknesses, and we came out of it mentally tougher and a stronger team. So great experience, and just want to be strong for league play because we're in league play now.
Pat, I was talking to you before we got started, and a little bit about your background in coaching, and you got started with some of the legends in Oregon high school basketball. Tell us a little bit how you got started and who you worked with and what you've done along the way.
You bet. Well, Glenn Kinney was a high school coach that I played against when I played at McNairy High School. He was the head coach at Corvallis High School. Then a couple years later, I'm playing for him at Central Oregon Community College in Bend. Played for him there for 2 years. Had great teammates, really good teams. Glenn was a fantastic coach. And then I got out of basketball for a little bit, and he, with his success, went on to Portland State and was the head coach at Portland State. And I contacted him and was able to work there at Portland State as a graduate assistant for a couple years under him.
This was Glenn was there just after the Freeman Williams and the head coach was Edwards, I think.
That's correct, Ken Edwards.
Ken Edwards, and you guys must have had a really tough experience there for a while.
Well, it was a tough experience. Gosh, we were going around the country playing teams like Michigan State. I remember getting a $10,000 check to play Michigan State on the road, but getting beat by 30. But that's kind of what the nature of what we were doing at Portland State at that time, and not winning many games. And we were famous for shutting the program down. And Glenn went on to Beaverton High School as the athletic director and head basketball coach, and asked me to come over there with him and work with him and coach and do my student teaching, which I plan to be a high school teacher. And so I worked there for a couple years under him. And then Nick Robertson came in when Glenn wanted to leave to get back to Central Oregon. And
Wow,
he went off to Redmond.
Two legends in the coaching community, Glenn Kenny and Nick Robertson. That's great mentors to be around.
They're two great coaches. And what's interesting is they're totally different coaches. Glenn is almost like being coached by your grandfather, almost a stately guy, almost a Lute Olson type high school coach. Nick's fireball coach, very strong-willed, very demanding, but great relationships with the kids. So I got to see and work under two great high school coaches, which I think is the best way to be a coach. I don't think you're born to coach. I think you learn to coach. And so for me to work under those two guys was a great experience for me.
And then in 1994, you left and you went and became the head coach at Westview. You're the only head coach you've ever had.
So far, I've been the only head boys basketball coach at Westview High School. And you're right, got there at 1994, was able to be a health teacher, retired 3 years back after 31 years of teaching in the Beaverton School District. My wife, Mary, finished 31 years of teaching in the Beaverton School District, retired a couple years ago. But I'm still coaching, and it's a great job to be a basketball coach and have the time to prepare and get ready. And teaching and coaching is an incredible job because you're chasing your tail constantly. And, it teaches you to be organized, to make sure that you've got your ducks in a row. And it was a great experience.
You mentioned your wife, and I heard her story when she told me that she played volleyball at Portland State and, in fact, played in that national championship game that Portland State played against Texas.
She did. My wife, Mary, who's now in the Portland State Hall of Fame with her volleyball team under Marlene Piper, a legendary coach who's also in the Hall of Fame for Portland State. She played against the University of Texas in the national championship game, and they lost in 5 sets. But what an amazing thing to be able to say that's in your background. And she's definitely the athlete in our family.
Your family's had a history in coaching of being mentored by people that are legends in the sport.
Yeah, and I just think, you mentioned a little bit earlier that I'm involved with the Basketball Coach Association. One of the things we're trying to do in that association is be a mentorship for upcoming coaches. I think it's a really tough job in this day and age. For all the things you have to do, and we want to be a support system for coaches who want to come into the field, help them do their job, stay in the field, because it's an important role, and we want to be there to support those coaches as they go through and advance.
Before we get on to your current team and the roster and some players and stuff, you're 22 years now at Westview High School. You've been to a couple of state tournament finals.
We have.
Twice, and both times you had the unfortunate circumstances of playing probably the 2 best Jesuit teams ever in existence.
Yeah, we played some great Jesuit teams. Stephen Holt, Kyle Wilcher, Loriaga, who walked on at Boise State and started as a freshman. They were just loaded teams, and other good players. But feel great to be able to say that I've gotten into a state championship game. And some people have said, "Well, you're the best public school in the state," and I said that doesn't matter. You want to be the best. You want to be the state champs. But it was a great opportunity, and I still have great memories. And the first year we just got beat by Jesuit. They were a better team. Second year, honestly, we played really well. We had them in a position where we felt like we were doing very well, and I made some mistake decisions as a coach that I look back on. I wish I could have done something different, but I didn't, and I think it cost us in that championship game. But I just have great memories, and I think about those players who helped get us there. And it's a lot of work and a lot of building, along with the coaches that we have in our basketball program that support.
Are you still in contact with any players that used to play for you or who are still playing now?
Yes. Andy Poling, Jack Poling is a junior on our basketball team, Andy Poling. But you stay in contact with a lot of your players. And we always tell them one of the most important things they can do as an ex-player is come back and visit. So every Christmas we have alumni that will come back. Andrew Jones contacted me. I hadn't talked to Andrew in a couple years, and he contacted me and said, "Coach, I'm flying in. I'm coming to LSI." He came up to me at the halftime of a basketball game, which is not a great time to go talk to a basketball coach. But it was so great to see him. And as a coach and a high school teacher, the relationships are super important. Winning is important. Winning championships are important. But seeing these guys develop, become men, go into different professions are more important than anything to us. And you're not able to have that relationship with every player you have, but you try to create that with a lot of your players. And I feel very good about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just talking a little bit about this team you have this year, what kind of stands out to you with this group that is a little bit different from what you've had in the past?
This group's a very athletic team. We were very athletic last year, went on a 15-game winning streak, got to the state tournament, lost to Jefferson in double overtime, and a really good Jefferson team peaking at the right time in a great game. This team's just as athletic in some ways. We're bigger, not as quick. So we've had to make some adjustments defensively, but we have more size. We still have 2 really good players. Saeed Ali, first-team All-Leaguer from last year. Mason Elliott, a first-teamer All-League from last year. Zach Schmerber, a second-team All-League player from last year, our starting quarterback. 3 really good players back from last year. And Mason and Saeed, as sophomores, played a lot. Some started some games. They were almost a nightmare as a coach for me. Getting them to grow up as sophomores, be tougher, be better, be stronger. Last year they were fantastic. This year they're leaders, and they're saying things that a coach would say. It's the kind of development you want to see in your players. Every day these guys are fun to go to practice with. They work hard. We're trying to get them to be mentally and emotionally and physically just sharper, so we're peaking at the right time. Again, the LSI is such a good test when you come out of that tournament because it exposes any weakness you have. We got beat by Grant basically in one area. We got out-rebounded badly. It exposed our rebounding inability. We got beat by Beaverton in a 1-point game in the last game of the LSI. It exposed us not screening enough for each other. So you walk out of that tournament and you feel like, hey, these are the things we got to work on. These guys you'll go to practice with, they'll listen to you, you can coach them, they'll get better, they'll improve, hopefully peak at the right time.
Yeah, I talked to Mason and Saeed at the Les Schwab tournament, so that was cool. And it was just nice to see them, talking. I was asking them about them, and they'd always direct it back, well, Saeed this or Mason this. And I'm like, okay, can you just answer about yourself? But
yes.
You could tell they were selfless, and they really enjoyed playing with each other. So
great.
That was really cool.
When you have guys that play like that together for that long at the varsity level, there is something about them. And they can get after each other, too, which we encourage as long as they do it in the right way and they respond the right way. That's a good thing to do, and we don't want it just to be from coaches to players. We want players to, in the right way, encourage, motivate, inspire each other, and sometimes challenge each other. And we think that's sometimes even more beneficial than a coach trying to challenge the player.
Yeah.
Coach, you're 8-3 overall, 2-1 in the Metro. Tell us a little bit about those 3 Metro games.
You got it. We're actually 3-1 in the Metro. I think I gave you the record wrong early up front. I'm not good at keeping track of that. I have to check all the time myself. But we opened up with a Southridge team that is huge, 6'8", 6'8", 6'6", 6'4". Felt very fortunate to have them at home and take care of business. And then we played Century in a makeup game because we had a snow day.
Don't say that word.
I know it, and it could be back here Wednesday from what I understand.
Don't.
So, and played Century over there, and we were able to hang on and win a close one. Played well at Sunset, and Sunset's a little bit down this year, but still very well coached, and so they scare the heck out of you, especially at their place, because I know Todd's.
It's a hard place to play in.
It is, and it's one of our great rivalries, so we knew we had to be up for it. Our kids played well and won by about 20 there. And then we have Beaverton last Friday night, and the kids played fantastic the whole game. And very disappointing. We feel like there's one crucial call when we had a 3-point lead with the ball underneath our basket on out-of-bounds play and got called for an offensive foul. That was a big game changer, but we know that stuff happens, and we got to respond to it. So we lost that game, and now have to get ready for Jesuit tomorrow night.
One of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier, at least we talked some about, is that you are the current president of the Oregon Basketball Coaches Association. First, how did you come by that job?
Yeah, well, a group of us started that. We feel like Oregon's got such great high school basketball coaches, but we were not very organized, and we needed to work with the Oregon Athletic Coach Association and the OSAA in terms of the direction of what was going on with high school basketball. And we were fragmented. We didn't have a common voice. We weren't united. So a group of us decided to get together, build an organization, become a committee, and then organize our other coaches throughout the state. We just finished our 9th year of having the Nike OACA High School Basketball Coaches Clinic, which we get about 350 coaches at Westview High School. It's a fundraiser for the state association. Again, it allows us to talk to the coaches, find out what their important things to them are, like the shot clock, like getting a week back from preseason that was taken away from us. We start a week later. We still start games the same time. You feel like you're barely able to introduce an offense. Your fundamentals are out the door. So we're trying to get that week back. We're also trying to work on the rule of 2, where as a high school coach, you're not limited on who you can work with on your high school kids. We're the ones that are certified. We're the ones that have an AD that oversees this. We ought to be able to have contact with our kids and still share them with other sports, but not have to ship kids out. And what about the kids that can't afford to go out and work for a skills coach? And high school coaches are great skills coaches. We ought to be able to have access to those kids. And right now, under the rules we have, you can work with 2 kids a day. I shouldn't have to say to 2 other kids on the side of the court, I can't work with you today. I can only work with these 2. Sorry about that. It just doesn't seem right. And we're making some headway because the OSA now sees it as a possible change with the 5A, 6A level. Maybe 1 through 4A needs to continue to have this rule because they really rely on athletes in every sport to be shared. But at the 5A, 6A level, you have a lot of football-only players, baseball-only players, basketball-only players. And we shouldn't have to farm those kids out to, outside our school. We ought to be able to work with them as coaches.
Well, let me discuss 2 issues with you. One of them is procedural, and one of them is substantive. I think these are two of the main issues that I hear about now in high school sports, particularly basketball. The procedural issue, of course, is the shot clock.
You bet.
Oregon doesn't have one. I didn't realize that most states don't have one. You brought that to my attention.
Yeah.
Me too.
The second issue I want to talk about is what seems to get a lot of people stirred up nowadays, and that's redistricting. And that's a talk every year. I start out hearing about we need to move to a different classification. We need to move to a different conference. There's schools in Oregon that travel hundreds of miles to play a game.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, especially if you start looking at the schools in Eastern Oregon, Central Oregon, and Southern Oregon. I was talking to Kelly Bookin from Churchill, and he's talking about how far they have to travel. And it's a challenge, and they get some coaches. He's the AD at Churchill High School. He was telling me it's really difficult for him to hang on coaches past a couple of years because they get burned out so quick.
Yeah.
The travel, and then you got to go back and do your job, whether you're a teacher, et cetera. But they'll look at that again in a couple of years, and I know they're working on it right now, but there's going to be some schools with the realignments, the classifications, et cetera, and hopefully they'll come up with what will make sense. It's a huge challenge in the state of Oregon because of geographically how we're built. You're looking at some of the schools in Bend. My wife's from Bend, Oregon, and they had some great rivalries in Bend, Redmond area. And now not all those teams are necessarily playing each other. But even if they did play each other, they have to be in a league with somebody outside that area too.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to travel from the valley.
All right. What about the shot clock issue?
You bet. The shot clock, it's almost unanimous in the state of Oregon that coaches want a shot clock. You're not going to see it be important in every game, on the boys' side at least. And in most games with the girls' side, you won't see it. But at the end of the quarter, end of a half, end of a game situation, it makes a difference. Anything that will help bring fans in and keep the game up to date with the college game, the pro game, is going to be productive and good for high school basketball. It is a financial issue. Hopefully there's a big organization that will come in and support the shot clock in 240 high schools in our state. And I think the fans would love it. It's just one more piece that just adds a little more excitement to the game.
Yeah, it just makes it more real and consistent everywhere.
It does.
Especially if these players are going to play on later. I mean, there's going to be a shot clock, so it's not like a shock to them or just like something to keep it more uniform in play.
I agree.
So, Coach, what's on the agenda coming up here for Westview?
Get ready for a game tomorrow. Get guys healthy. Get us sharp. League play. Friday night we go to Glencoe. Every game's important. With the RPI system, every game counts. Your first game of the season counts. Your LSI games count. Your league games count. You don't want to lose a game early in the season because that could cost you at the end of the season. So everything's important. But, again, for us, getting our guys healthy, this is the time of year you work on some detail things, being sharper. You've got your offense in. You know kind of who you are defensively. Just working on screening, skill development, which is a fun part of the season when you get into spending more time on skill development. Maybe shorten practices a little bit to keep guys healthy and keep their legs sharp, especially as we've got some bigger kids. We've got a 6'7" and a 6'9" kid, so we want those guys to not be leg weary, but lots of shooting, but keep them sharp.
I hadn't checked today. Do you know what your RPI is?
I believe we're number 7 in the RPI.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's high. It might be higher than that.
It was fifth.
Okay.
When we lost to Beaverton, we became 7, but it bounces around so much.
Yeah.
We had success and beat a good Churchill team who's 1 or 2 in the 5A. That's going to help us all through the season. So you'll see impacts like that. As they have more success, it impacts our RPI as well.
Yeah, speaking of that Churchill team, Luke Wilson, or was it?
Yeah.
He was so athletic.
Super athletic.
Yeah,
He's just a handful and played really well against us. I think he had 14 in the fourth quarter alone. Just tried to take over the game. Very athletic.
Looks like he plays 3 sports, so I think he does. So.
Yes. Kind of can do what he wants when he wants to, and kind of depends on what you can do with the rest of the players on that team.
Yeah.
Coach, what did you teach?
I taught health for 22 years, and I was a special ed teacher for 10 years. Great experience. Health teacher is so fun, so interesting. You're covering so many different subjects, and I always took a lot of pride in being a teacher, coach. I just think that's an important thing. And John Wooden's somebody I idolized, and he always talked about loving being called a teacher. He saw himself as a teacher. And I just think it's important that be a coach, be a teacher, go in and do a good job in the classroom. I always took pride. Kids in my classroom didn't know if I won or lost the night before because I had a job to do in the classroom. And I couldn't come dragging in, and I couldn't take it out on them if the referees didn't make a good call or our kids didn't play well. You had to get the job done. And it was just a great experience, and I always felt like it was a privilege since I'm retired now. It was a privilege to do what I wanted to do in life.
Is coaching making the retirement a little easier?
It is. One of my concerns was I didn't want to sit there and think basketball all day. But what I find is I have more time to watch film. I have more time to prepare my practice plan. I'm not trying to get some exercise in at 10 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning. I can go out at a normal hour. And I just have more time to get things done, a little more time to dedicate to the Oregon Basketball Coaches Association, which is our coaches group, and a little more time with my wife, who's also retired. So all those things are really good. But being a teacher was a great experience.
All right. Anything else, Ashley?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right. That's head coach Pat Coons of the Westview boys basketball team. Pat, thanks for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure talking to you, and you've got some great stories to tell.
Great. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been my pleasure.
And good luck as president of the Oregon Basketball Coaches Association. We expect maybe some good direction on all of that.
Thank you very much. We'll try.
All right, that's head coach Pat Coons of the Westview boys basketball team. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with head coach Nia Mason. She is the girls coach at Lake Oswego High School.